Welcome back to AWE TV. My name is Mark Pizer, and with me is Rafael Brown, co-founder and creative director of Digital Myths. Rafael, thanks for joining us. You have a talk as part of the digital track here at AWE where you're talking how to help design VR experiences. The name of the talk is going from first person to VR, right? Mm-hmm. Just to give a little explanation to the viewers watching us, you have about 20 years in game development with all the big publishers, EA, 2K, Activision, and at some point you started working with John Carmack, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where I want to jump off and let you take over. You saw John Carmack go whole hog, full commitment to Oculus, and at that point you decided to make a decision. So, and that was to start your own studio?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's been a long ambition of mine to build out my own studio.
Yeah.
And VR felt like the right time. That I got into the industry back in the mid-90s with a company called Looking Glass that made games like Thief and System Shock.
Okay.
I'd always been focused on creating immersive presence, even in early first person. And so when I was at id Software and I was working under Carmack and he started to talk about VR, I started to perk up. I was a little worried, a little skeptical, but when he got serious about it, he's still the smartest man I've ever met. And when he said that it was going to happen, I had to take that seriously.
Yeah, very cool. Since then until now, I mean, you've been involved or definitely curious, exploring it. What are some of the major changes? We know Oculus, Facebook, of course, validating everyone else's decision to go into VR. But in your realm, in design, like how have we gotten to today?
Gotcha. I think that where we really got to today is when it became clear that across the console space, the PC space, and the mobile space, all three, that there are different players, and that there are enough of the early players to validate each space individually, and that there's the beginning of a coherent ecosystem, and that there's enough similarity across all of those that developers can go in from that range of indie and amateur and enthusiast to seasoned and veteran developers, but we can all sort of go into the space and realize that there's a robustness there.
Sure.
And especially when we start to realize that there's similarities between the pieces, we can say, oh, here, I can use an Oculus Touch controller and a Vive controller and a Move controller, and they're not perfect analogs, but they're close enough that you can start to sort of build across all of these. Okay. And then that helps tremendously.
And you have to keep that in mind. You're not just remapping buttons, right? Yeah, you have to keep in mind that these have to serve a purpose in VR. Whether they're tracked or not perfectly, they're tracked differently. But these cannot just be controllers, right?
That's right. So I actually brought up that example kind of intentionally, which is that there are a lot of analogs of going from a monitor into an HMD and going from first person into VR, but there are definitely things that are different, and there are things that are different about in sort of three key areas: how it looks, how it moves, and how it sounds. And we have to approach those kind of starting from scratch. And the notion of going from a mouse and a keyboard or from a gamepad controller to a motion controller, just separating your hands, it's really almost like unchaining the shackles.
Sure.
And it really just means you have to start over. Because you don't think about doing different things with your hands. But those sorts of assumptions, you just explode them and then you go, oh, I have to pick up the pieces and start from scratch.
Yeah. So you also mentioned sound. I mean, that's one of the most underlooked at components of the experience, right? And are you talking about, what do you mean by sound? 3D spatial audio?
Yeah. So the whole process of creating it, that if you are building for a 3D real-time rendered environment in VR, that first off, you're going to have an order of magnitude greater of audio content than you're used to in the console space.
Because you can pick up everything, or
Because everything needs to be physical if it can, but also because you need to give cues to the user.
Right.
That you need to have something happen over there, and you can't go, now cue a cinematic transition over there. You instead have to go, hey, something's happening over here, and I need to draw your attention. So it's segmenting the sound to allow people to experience it at their own pace. It's drawing their attention. It's just making a richer world and making it feel more real.
Yeah, I have a friend at Shell Games who gave his perspective on VR, and it's people want to touch everything.
Yes.
People want to touch everything, experience everything, go wherever they can, open doors, crawl into cabinets, and you have to design against that, don't you?
Yeah.
Or promote it.
Yeah, and so this is one of the things that I both love and am occasionally a little terrified as a game designer, which is that you have to build rich experiences for users. They have to be relatively systemic and emergent, because as soon and Jesse Schell has talked about this, that as soon as you break your own rules, the users react to that. They go, well, I did it over here, why can't I do it over here? Because they're trying to understand how to use that world. And also to that very basic point, that people just go like, oh, this world is real, I can do this. And you effectively become that cat that's just like, I can knock things over. And it's fantastic.
But you still have to guide them, like you said. There's a sound, audio, I think, underutilized in games, but I think it's under-respected. It's not as respected by human beings ourselves. We don't realize how much we use sound, or how much we can distinguish distance, even.
Audio is like core user interface. You notice it when it's broken. You notice it when it's not there. It destroys the experience if it's not there. If it's there, you just go, well, of course it is. But it's massive. It's absolutely undersold, but audio is absolutely half the experience.
How else have you learned to guide the user?
Sound is absolutely one way. Visuals is another way. Animation, little bits of visual effects. So I will say that not enough people in VR yet. You have a lot of people who are using sort of really basic implementations of Unity or Unreal. Not enough people yet are using visual effects. That's one thing that our studio is doing is, we know how to do standard AAA console PC development. Having technical artists and visual effects artists who dive into, in the same way that some of the animation studios are diving into good visual effects, is massively important, both for wowing the player, the user, but also just for going like, hey, there's something over there, and oh, I haven't seen that before, and then people wander over and check it out. Because it's not, oh, I've got a handful of hard surface models that I got in the Unity Assets store. It's you go, ooh, there's a sparkly effect, or oh, there's some water, or oh, there's complex physics, and then people go, A, that's more real, B, it's more fantastic, C, it's more natural. It's a combination of all of those. And then they go to it.
What do you want people to walk away with when they come to your talk at AWE?
I think that the biggest thing is I want them to walk away with an understanding of the importance of experimenting. That it's kind of like the early days of mobile. You go back to 2007, 2008, 2009 with building for an iPod Touch, even before there were lots of phones out there. Building for that early iPhone 2G, 3G, before everybody knew what to do, you had lots of people that would build that would replicate things from other spaces. They go, here's a virtual joystick. And then you go, actually, there's a more elegant way to do that. We haven't found those yet. We're just starting to experiment. But what I would really stress is go and experiment. Fail early and often. Try things out. Don't be afraid to look foolish. Because somewhere in that looking foolish, we're going to come out with amazing things.
Do you think there's a clear winner of the Vive, the Oculus, I'll throw in gear, that's a mobile, versus the Tether, Vive, and Oculus? You don't have to answer that. But I want to know, like, what are people thinking? I mean,
I think that I don't. So I'm platform agnostic. I have all of these. space. I like all of them, and I like different things about them.
Okay.
I think that the mobile space has a good deal of growing to do, and it needs to get a little bit more robust.
Okay.
Mobile is going to grow very steadily in the next few years. It's fantastic that Google has joined Samsung in that space, and more are going to really explode that space. It's hard to do very robust things there right now, but that's going to change.
Okay.
They need to get up to a slightly more high fidelity experience, and they need to solve the input problem, and they're starting to do that.
Okay.
I would say I absolutely love working on the Rift and on the Vive. I think that what the market is showing is that likely in the next year, the Sony Morpheus, the PSVR, is going to be the winner in terms of purely getting hardware out into the marketplace.
Well, because they have the install base of the PlayStation.
They've absolutely got the install base, and it's not just that, it's also that we forget how hard it is to actually make large amounts of hardware. That
Sure.
you look at like a Sony, a Nintendo, a Microsoft, Apple, Google, they know how to make not tens of thousands of units, but tens of millions of units. And I think that it's hard to make this stuff at this point. It's hard to make it in volume, and you're going to have some folks who are going to leapfrog in because they can just deliver mass quantities.
Okay.
But that said, I think that the PC space is a better space for innovation.
Okay.
The console space is going to be a really big entry point come the end of the year for some folks, it will be the cheapest way, even including mobile, for them to get in. You'll say, I've got a PS4, I spend $400 on a PSVR and I'm in, and that's cheaper than buying a new phone. And it's
a new
cheaper
rig
than
also.
a PC.
Yeah, a new PC rig.
Yeah, and you've got a nice baseline.
Sure.
And then the PC, Vive and Rift will come in steadily as those new GPUs get out there.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that the thing for people to keep in mind is that there are several distinct waves of mobile, of effectively console VR, mobile VR, PC VR, and web VR. And I'm not talking about in terms of when the hardware is launching, but in terms of when critical mass adoption is going to happen. Each of those has its own pacing, and that's really important for developers to think about.
Okay, interesting, very interesting. What's next with Digital Myths? Next year, what can we expect? Even at next year's AWE?
Sure. So we are going to be showing our demo at E3 privately. I'm hoping that by PAX we'll be showing publicly.
Okay. Something you're working on for a demo or for other companies?
We have an original IP that we're talking to major publishers and investors about. And what we're going to be doing next is getting that out steadily as we figure out our partners, getting that into the public side.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, that at least currently is going to be a cross-platform console PC original IP title.
Okay, sounds ambitious.
It is. And I think that the last thing that I'll say is that more and more folks need to get into the online and social VR space.
Okay.
That's something that we're doing, and it's hard, but it's good, and more of us need to do it because the future of VR is social.
That's kind of what I'm picking up on. I'll be talking to someone from Linden Labs later tomorrow, so hopefully I get their take on this too. Thank you, Rafael. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. With us was Rafael Brown from Digital Myths. Thanks.